In order to graph this function, I want to first graph the first part of this function. I want to graph it as just the f of x equals negative 3 2 to the x. And then I want to look at how these two numbers shifted. So let's make a table of values to start this off. Okay, I want to find a table of values. So I could plug in whatever I want. I'm going to go 0, 1, 2. You can choose whatever values. When you plug in 0, you should get negative 3. Because you plug in 0, that drops out and you get negative 3. And then if we're doubling each time, double negative 3, won't that be negative 6? Double negative 6, won't that be negative 12? So you start with negative 3 and you're doubling repeatedly. You could check it as if you go up, are you dividing by 2? Alright, so those values, so let's plot those values. 0, negative 3, here's a dot. 1, negative 6 will be right down here. I can't plot 2, negative 12, it's kind of off the grid. And then what I want to do is do a quick little sketch. All I'm doing here is getting kind of the idea of what it looks like. So it looks like something like that. That's not my graph, that's my original graph. And then I look at this, my HK. This H value, like all H values, is the left to right shift, and it's the opposite of that number. So since it's a minus 1, that means I'm going to go in the positive direction 1, left to right, which means I'm going right 1. And this 4 is your up or down, and it doesn't change, so it's just meaning positive 4, so up 4. So I know we're going to go up 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each value I made, each point. In this point, I'm going to go right 1 and up 4. I'm going to go right 1 and up 4. So I'm going to go right 1 and up 4. There's my new dot. And then I'm going to go right 1 and up 4. There's my new dot. Now the problem is, for a lot of people, is there's this asymptote right here. This line, this red graph will never touch that line. It gets closer and closer. So I actually need to bring this asymptote up 4 as well. You don't have to move it over because it really won't make sense to do that. But I got to move the asymptote up 4. So I'm also going to take and put an asymptote right here. And what you'll come up with is your final graph, which looks like that. Make sure that it kind of goes up against the asymptote. It goes through those two blue dots. That is your asymptote. Very important. All right. And that is just helping you sketch it. That's just kind of what it looks like to start with. Let's also label it as a horizontal asymptote. Let's label what it is. My horizontal asymptote is y equals what? Well, that blue line is going at y equals 4. That's important to say that this is the equation of that blue line, because it says right here, it wants the asymptote. So I drew it, and I'm also labeling it. I have my 2 points and my graph. Again, this is not part of the graph. This just helped you graph. In order to graph this log that has a transformation, we first need to think about the parent graph. So my parent graph for this one is going to be f of x is equal to log base 2 x. All right, that is my parent log. That is about your shift, and that 3 is how it's going to stretch. So let me write that in red. The 3 is actually important, but we're going to do it later in the table. Meaning, if I put this little table here, I have x here, and I have f of x. Now if I'm going to graph just the green, and then what I'm going to do is take every answer for the green and multiply by 3 when I'm done. So that's kind of how I want to kind of approach this. Again, we're going to graph this, log x base 2, and then multiply every answer by 3, because that is your vertical stretch, how you're making it bigger every time. So how we do logs is we do the y values first. So I'm going to put 0, I'm going to put 1, and I'm going to put 2. And then we think of the log as 2 to the y power equals x. Now remember, y is f of x. So we plug in 0. 2 to the 0 is 1. And then we go 2 to the first, which is 2. And then 2 squared. Again, you're plugging in this number right here for y. 2 squared is 4. So I now have some coordinates. But I need to now take, and these are my coordinates, I need to triple every y or f of x value. So I take that 3 and multiply it by all these. I'll multiply each one by 3. And what I end up with is, that's still 0. 3 times 0 is still 0. 3 times 1 is 3. And 2 times 3 is 6. So I am going to use these numbers because I tripled my green f of x numbers. So let's plot this graph, and then we're going to shift it according to HK. So come to HK in a second. So to graph this, I have 1, 0, so I have that point right there. I have 2, 3, so over 2, up 3. And then I have 4, 6, so over 4, up 6, which is going to be kind of off the graph a little bit. But we have those 3 points. And we should be aware, because of how logs work, they kind of look like this. Logs always have an asymptote on the y-axis. So they kind of look like this. You can tell it's kind of stretched if you know what a regular log looks like. They're more kind of curved like this. But because of the tripling, they tend to stretch them and make them a lot more stretched. I guess the best word. They're wider, if you want to call it that. But stretch is a great word. Vertically stretched. We push this up. If that was a 1/3 in front, this graph would be very squished, shrunken. So it's going to be very tight, like that. Anyway, so now we need to translate. So if we look at these values, those are how we're going to translate. And so what we'll notice here is the 4 tells us we're going to go opposite of the 4 in the x direction. So the opposite of 4 is -4, so -4 would be left 4. And then the -1 is up and down, so negative is down, so we're going to be down 1. So we're going to take each of these dots and move them left 4 and down 1. So let's see what happens. I'm going to go left 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 1. That is my new point. I'm going to go left 4 and down 1. That is my new point. I'm going to go left 4 and down 1. That is my new point. Now, we also got to shift the asymptote. Remember, this was the asymptote, so that needs to be going left 4 and down 1. You can't really make an asymptote go down 1 as it's vertical. So we're just going to move this line over, and we have an asymptote right there, because it helps me graph it. And then I kind of create my graph through those points. And I now have my blue graph, which was the red graph, shifted left 4 and down 1. I also want to label my asymptote. So my asymptote is a vertical line, which is x equals -4, because it goes through -4. And this is my vertical asymptote. I want to label that. And we also just want to make sure I have the 2 exact points. Well, I have 3, so I'm good. 3 exact points, a vertical asymptote right there, drawn and labeled. Looks like we're good. Again, for both of these, make sure you first graph the parent graph of each, and then you translate them.